How do you see the defense industrial base kind of changing its posture in terms of incentives and also, most importantly, avoiding the disincentives, and what might those be? I think that's still to be determined.
Well, one of the incentives, I know we talked a little bit earlier, is around IP. We can spend some more time talking about that. But, right now there's no real incentive for companies to hand over their IP and data rights. So I think we're going to have to take a hard look at, because, once the government can get that IP and use it, it's going to make life better and make products go faster, things like that. But how are you going to get that? We're going to have to come up with an incentivization. You're going to have to figure out how to monetize use of IP. That's one area where we're going to have to really kind of roll our sleeves up and
I
get in
think people are finally starting to talk about the data rights issue, which of course is infinitely complex and nuanced and has been for decades in the aerospace and defense industry with government. There's no easy answer to any of this, and both sides need to have their sacred rights acknowledged in all of this. But I do think that people are really starting to talk about it in a way that perhaps in previous years they weren't talking about it, where it was such a third rail hot topic that everyone just kind of avoided it. But doesn't that mean it's precisely that issue that we should be talking about? I think that probably is going to be something that we're seeing more of. Again, the SPEED Act, the Forged Act, both have provisions for product data itself being used either in manufacturing functions or in maintenance functions, or both.
I think the demand signal is crystal clear on this, and we saw it with Secretary Army Driscoll, right? And maybe going a little bit, I don't want to fall either side of the argument there, but essentially needing product data to actually do additive manufacturing. So whether you're doing it for there or if you're thinking about shipbuilding, and we had a whole panel discussion at the National Security Exchange, in November about the use of digital engineering, the IP coming from product data, and then utilizing that for additive manufacturing. So I think we can't hinder our ability to actually increase production or increase the things that we need in the supply chain because we're too wrapped around data rights and things of that nature. We talked earlier about speed and how do we actually get the supply base back up to where it needs to be? How do we get manufacturing to where it needs to be? And part of that is people, and there's only so many people that we can actually train as welders, and especially if you get into really super, high-end welding around, Navy nuclear plants and things of that nature, it's a whole nother level, right?
Yep.
So we got to start thinking about autonomous things that actually, like autonomous welders and robotic things of that nature and additive manufacturing as like a supplement to actual human labor. In some cases, think about, can we get to a point where we have a lights out manufacturing where it's, it's all automated, right? We know there's other countries out there, peer adversaries that are going down that path and perhaps have already achieved that. So to me, the data rights piece is we have to acknowledge it, make sure people understand and get paid appropriate for it, but it can no longer be the stumbling block for us to be able to actually increase production and do the things we need to do.
Right. And that is a culture, a way of thinking change. So incentives are going to be critical to kind of break through that. And you're going to see things too, like what the Army's doing with Sky Foundry to kind of mass produce drones and, taking in the, technical data packages, having the Army build and then, pay a royalty licensing fee for using that IP. Like when we see something like that in work, I think that'll start to get people more comfortable with the concept.
I think the other incentive, Alex, you asked, what incentives out there, and depends on where you fall within the industry, incentive or disincentive. But I think the way of cost plus programs need to go by the wayside to firm fix, because that is what's going to force the culture change. I need to get lean. I need to think about how do I get efficient, right, and those types of things.
Right.
Because in some cases we've had conversations with customers like, hey, we can make you more efficient. And their response is, why do I want to be more efficient? It's a cost plus program. This is where I'm making my margin.
Yeah.
So the mindset, again, has to change. And again, it depends on where you fall on the argument.
This is hard because if you look at a lot of red programs that were challenged, those were firm fixed price development contracts that our customers took, solving really hard problems. So a firm fixed price, there's a natural tendency to not want to do that, especially for development programs.
Right.
So there's a tension there that I think we're going to have to kind of get through. But yeah, and I think the answer is more, asking industry to, hey, use your investment, build up a capability, and oh, by the way, we'll take it even if it is 80-85%.
And by red program, we should maybe clarify
It's like a program losing a lot of money. Kind of
behind
thing.
schedule,
Behind
over
schedule,
budget,
yeah,
those types of things.
And
right?
there's certainly no shortage of those.
So back to the data rights issue is, product data for things like remanufacturing, for maintenance, and also I know we touched on this the other day, but product data for AI training, and especially for operational capabilities. Again, I think that is going to be a very important priority, and we really haven't figured out what the guideposts in that debate are going to look like, but we know that both of those roads are going to be converging at some point soon. How do you marry up operational data with data from the engineering side of all of these physical products? Visual language action models, VLAs, are large language models that are trained not on textual data alone, but also on visual data. How important is CAD going to be for that? So that's a very important future. Again, it's still a TBD how we're going to be working that.